Hello. It's almost like a chant, isn't it? You know, I was talking to my hypnotherapist a while ago, and she was saying that I forget the name of all this stuff, but something that you can do. It's very similar to the stuff I talk about in The Joy of Not Thinking and in Stop Being Serious. Like it's almost like a monk thing, but like it's like that, like ooh. You do that noise, and it you feel it in your body. You specifically feel it in your chest. It can be very releasing. Anyway, that's probably not the perfect segue into what we're going to talk about today, but what the hell? Maybe it is the perfect segue. I want to just continue talking about Coué. A barrage of Coué. Don't worry, I am, listen, against perhaps my better judgment, I am reading some of the comments on my YouTube channel still, because I've conversed with a lot of people previously on there, even though I'm not responding to comments anymore. So yeah, don't worry, I'm still going to talk about spiritual concepts on this channel probably, and big shout out to Hugo. You know who you are if you're hearing this. Hugo's been saying that with these Coué videos, just how all of Neville's stuff and a lot of the stuff that we look at as this kind of like magical, exotic law of attraction, law of assumption type of teachings comes back to autosuggestion. That's like what Israel Regardie's, critical piece on Neville was talking about. And it's basically what I think too. I think that autosuggestion is really the kind of theoretical underpinning of most of these law of attraction concepts, all linked to the Regardie video I did on Neville's work, above and below. Definitely worth looking at that. What we suggest to ourselves, and when I say autosuggestion, I'm not just talking about Coué's method of saying before bed and when you wake up in the morning every day in every way I'm getting better and better. I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about what Coué was really talking about, which is that we are suggesting to ourselves thoughts the whole day, every day. We can't help but suggest things to ourselves. In other words, we can't help but think. Thinking is another word for suggestion, what we're thinking to ourselves. And in my opinion, imagination, what we're imagining is just synonymous with thinking, is synonymous with suggesting, what we self-suggest. I realize more and more, I think one reason that I'm so interested in these ideas, and Coué specifically, is that he ties together this idea of thinking and what we're thinking to ourselves. Better than just about anybody I've ever come across. Obviously, The Joy of Not Thinking, that guide I wrote, is all about what happens when you quote unquote don't think. But what it's really about is how when we disrupt our normal thinking patterns, we realize there's something there that's deeper than what we usually assume. And that what we assume for ourselves is usually a lot shittier than it needs to be. That if we allow our thinking to be more open and free, we feel better, and we just our life becomes better. And this ties into one of the teachers that has affected me the most in my life, if not the most, who is Byron, and that's Byron Katie. Byron Katie asks, what would you be without that thought? What would you be without that thought? That's a very, very profound question. Byron Katie's a very, very profound teacher, but she's touching upon thinking in the same way that, the idea of not thinking is being touched upon, where you realize that your thoughts are not necessarily true until you buy into them. And the thing is, we're making up a story. We are thinking no matter what. We cannot stop thinking, actually. Okay, it's impossible. It's impossible to really be without any thoughts, right? We're thinking. That's part of being alive. It's a biological, physiological thing. And so what the heck are you going to do with those thoughts? And once we realize, like by getting into the law of attraction, that we can be thinking more positively than we initially assumed, we can start working with our thinking in a more effective manner, far more effective of a manner. And nobody explains this more clearly than Coué. So I'm just going to go back to self-mastery through conscious auto-suggestion yet again. Last video, I was reading those great quotes, just quickly read part of it again. Coué says, we must therefore endeavor to direct our imagination, which at present directs us. In other words, we must therefore endeavor to direct our thinking, to have a large amount of control and direction over our thinking instead of letting our thinking direct us. When we let go of thought, when we realize what we would be without that thought, we realize that we give too much credence to our negative thinking, to our negative stories. What would it be like if we were able to turn that off and instead of having a negative story, a negative train of thoughts, created a positive train of thoughts, a positive train of suggestions, a positive imaginal concept of our life instead of a negative imaginal concept? Because there's no real difference between self-suggestion, imagination, and thinking. They're basically all describing the same thing when we get a little bit deeper about it. Again, Coué said, we must therefore endeavor to direct our imagination, which at present directs us. In this way, we easily become physically and mentally masters of ourselves. We can do this by conscious autosuggestion, which is based on the principle that every idea firmly implanted in our mind tends to become true for us and to realize itself. In other words, if you feel as if you have a large, degree of control and direction over your thinking, then what you are thinking has a tendency of actually occurring in your life. You will become healthier. You will become more loved. You will become, more prosperous, more abundant. And you will feel better. Every day in every way, I'm getting better and better. So a little after the excerpt I read the other day, someone asked Coué, for those of us who are sad or who are in distress, what do we do if we're sad or in distress? And Coué says, as long as you think I am sad, you cannot be gay. You cannot be happy. And in order to think something, it is enough to say without effort, I think this thing, etc. Pain or distress, no matter how violent it may be, will disappear. That I can affirm positively. This is, again, if you're new to this stuff, it might go over your head, quite frankly. This is like so freaking profound what Coué is saying here. Let me read it again. The question is, if we're sad or distressed, what should we do? And Coué says this is the answer he gives. This is deceptively simple, but in my experiences, this is true what he's saying. Coué says the solution if you're sad or distressed is this: as long as you think I am sad, you cannot be gay. You cannot be happy. And in order to think something, it is enough to say without effort, I think this thing, etc. Pain or distress, no matter how violent it may be, will disappear. That I can affirm positively. In other words, if you convince yourself through your thinking, through your self-suggestion, through your imagination, that I am happy, I am getting happier, I am feeling better, I am no longer sad, the sadness is receding from my life, the depression is receding from my life, I am thinking positively and becoming more positive of a person, then that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. What you're self-suggesting to yourself, what automatically you suggest to yourself is what's going to happen. And you can train yourself, control your imagination, your thinking to a large degree by simply starting to state over and over again what you want to happen. and buying into it. And by affirming positively or negatively, but fully affirming that something is going to happen or not going to happen, you start to change your thinking and making it more positive. We are depressed and sad, and then we kind of just belabor those thoughts and the feelings that go with it all day. We play into imaginally we play into that depression, the whole day after day, week after week. If you start to fully affirm, I'm getting better. I'm getting better. The depression is lifting. I'm becoming more and more positive. If you fully start to buy into those thoughts, then your the thoughts that you are thinking unconsciously, imaginally, start to change as well. And right now, the problem most of us have is that, if we're depressed or sad, we say, oh, I'm getting better. I'm getting better. But then we have a whole series of negative, quote unquote, unconscious thoughts. In other words, imaginal thoughts after that are saying, no, nothing's better. Things are not improving, blah, blah, blah. What you want to do is you must snuff that out. You must start to say, no, I'm getting better. I control my thinking, at least to a large degree, and I am changing the direction of my life. As Coué said, we must direct our imagination. We must direct our thinking. We must direct our self-suggestion, which at present directs us. Again, every idea firmly implanted in our mind tends to become true for us and realize itself. Firmly implanted. This just can't be like passive, oh, I'm getting better, I'm getting better, I'm getting better. And then you're thinking shitty negative thoughts about how you're not getting better the rest of the day. You got to firmly implant these positive self-suggestions into your life. If you start doing that, things are going to improve.